hypocrisy, the fake outrage. They are at all-time highs right now throughout the mainstream media. They cannot stand it when one of their tactics are used against one of their own. 4 years ago, normal people, we were legitimately outraged. For decades, we have used sports as an escape from reality, an escape from the problems of everyday life. On Sunday afternoons in the fall, NFL Red Zone, it gives me the chance to relax and think about nothing but football for 7 consecutive hours. From October to about mid-April, my Pelicans, they give me the same opportunity 3, maybe 4 nights a week. Now, fans of other NBA teams are lucky because their teams give them the same opportunity through May, maybe even June. My Pelicans, they just prefer to end their season in mid-April every year. I mean, why make the playoffs when you can start your summer vacation in the spring? 4 years ago, normal people, we were angry because the mainstream media, they were encouraging athletes to politicize sports. LeBron James was praised. The media crowned him the woke king of kings because he used the NBA platform to combat mythical racism. Megan Rapinoe went from being completely unknown to being the inspiration of prepubescent boys across the country. Before she copied Colin Kaepernick and started kneeling for the national anthem, the next her, she can make trips to the store to restock on her supply of Rogaine and no one would notice. She went from being a minimum wage soccer player in a league that no one knew existed to being a multi-millionaire who shares a mansion-sized nest with the Sue bird and the most expensive oak tree in America. While normal people turned on athletes in sports leagues that bit into the shit sandwich and politicized sports, the mainstream media, they praised them for it, which is why I was incredibly confused yesterday afternoon with all this fake outrage in the media towards Dan Staley from Outkick. I'll refer to him as Danny Z going forward because I'm sure I am mispronouncing his name. Now, in my defense, Danny Z, you don't exactly have a last name that's easy to pronounce, but I will commend you for your excellent journalism yesterday. It could not have been easy to ask this question. It could not have been easy as the only journalist in a press conference, which I would assume was filled with parishioners of Woke United Methodist. It couldn't have been easy to ask a real question. The mainstream media, they are referring to this as a gotcha question. To me, this seemed like an incredibly easy question to answer. If I was at a press conference and someone from the media asked me, "Do you think biological men should be allowed to compete in women's basketball?" I would appreciate them for it. I would appreciate them for giving me the opportunity to answer one of the easiest questions to answer. Do I think biological men should be allowed to compete in women's basketball? No. Next question. For Dawn Staley, though, this question was incredibly difficult. It took her a while to formulate her response. Now, you would have thought that Danny Z was asking Dawn Staley to solve the Pythagorean theorem. You would have thought that Dawn Staley was being asked to come up with a solution for peace in the Middle East. Yesterday morning, players and coaches from Iowa and South Carolina met with the media. Now, I didn't hear diesel engines and exhaust mufflers in the background this time, so I assume the NCAA moved this press conference away from the loading dock they had set up for the young women on Thursday. Yeah, the press conference for the women's Final Four, it was held, I'm pretty sure, at a loading dock. The diversity deputies in the mainstream media, they expressed their fake outrage with that too. The men are meeting with the media in the conference room of the Four Seasons. The women had to meet with the media in the warehouse of Club Shay Shay. Where is the equity? Oh! Well, maybe the NCAA had to set up the press conference in a dungeon because women's college basketball remains unprofitable. All kidding aside, though, absolutely ridiculous for the NCAA to have a press conference for these young women at a loading dock. But anyway, Dawn Staley speaking with the media. I'm sure they were asking her the typical fluff questions. How are you feeling, Dawn? Isn't this amazing? People are finally paying attention to Caitlin Clark. Women's college basketball. Tell me how you feel, Dawn. Express those feelings to me. I guess Danny Z from Outkick was tired of the boring questions. he decided to ask Dawn Staley a real question. Watch it for yourself.
One of the major issues facing women's sports right now is the discussion topic about the inclusion of transgender athletes, biological males, in women's sports. I was wondering if you would tell me your position on that issue.
Damn, you got deep on me, didn't you? I'm under the opinion of if you're a woman, you should play. If you consider yourself a woman and you want to play sports or vice versa, you should be able to play. You want me to go deeper?
Do you think transgender women should be able to participate
that's your question
in
you want
basketball?
Me to ask. You want to ask, so I'll give you that, yes.
To say Dawn Staley was flustered by this question would be a massive understatement. The question is, why? Why would Dawn Staley be flustered by an easy question to answer? Again, it's not like Danny Z was asking her to join doctors at Woke Memorial Hospital to find a cure for stage 4 OMB. Orange Man Bad! This question should have been simple to answer. If you're capable of growing facial hair without the assistance of Just for Men, should you be allowed to play women's basketball? Now, I can only speculate as to why Dawn Staley was so hesitant here with her answer. Dawn Staley's a born-again Christian. She is very proud of her faith, as she should be. Just last week, Dawn Staley was criticized on social media for saying something like, "Something must be wrong with you if you don't believe in God," or something like that. Now, in the past, Dawn Staley, she's also been willing to preach the religion of woke. Here on the channel, we call it Woke United Methodist. There's a verse in the Bible, not the woke Bible, the real Bible. There's a verse in the Bible that says something to the effect of, "You cannot serve two gods." Maybe Dawn Staley was hesitant to answer because she was trying to figure out on the spot how to best answer this question. Do I answer based on my faith, or do I answer based on my political ideology? Obviously, Dawn Staley chose the latter. Now, to be fair to Dawn Staley, she was put in a tough spot here, and this is one of the main problems when you're a member of Woke United Methodist. If Dawn Staley had told the media that she believed athletes should compete against the gender they were born as instead of the gender they identify as, she would have been absolutely destroyed by the mainstream media. Instead of defending her yesterday, the media, they would have demonized her. Dawn Staley, she has a long history of, I guess, pissing off, for lack of a better word, conservative media. So I guess it was easier for Dawn Staley to continue pissing them off instead of angering her pretend friends in the mainstream media. Truth is, though, with her response to this question, Dawn Staley damaged the same young women that she has been fighting for decades. For decades, Dawn Staley has advocated for women's sports. She has pushed for more media coverage. She has pushed for more awareness and recognition. Caitlin Clark has taken women's college basketball into the mainstream, but you can make a strong case that Dawn Staley paved the way for Caitlin Clark. Dawn Staley has been one of the leading voices of women's college basketball for years, for decades now. And now, all of a sudden, she is advocating for biological men to be allowed to compete in women's sports? Let me ask you something. Who does that hurt? Whose opportunities would be taken away if biological men can try out for the women's team at South Carolina? If 10-foot Tom is allowed to play women's basketball at South Carolina, 5'5" Fran doesn't have a chance. If muscled Marv is allowed to play power forward, the only way Tiny Tina is seeing the court is if she's a cheerleader. I don't think I need to sit here and explain why biological men should not be allowed to play women's basketball. There is a reason we have a men's team and a women's team. The reason should not be hard to figure out. Naturally, though, the mainstream media, they came out in full force to express their fake outrage. Nancy Armour from USA Today, she was her usual emotional self. Dawn Staley is a national treasure! How dare you ask this question 24 hours before the biggest game of her career? This is so distracting. Yeah, I agree, Nancy. This probably is distracting. This is also the reason that politics should never be involved with sports. Laura Ingraham from Fox News, she was vilified years ago for telling NBA players to shut up and dribble. Laura Ingraham was demonized for telling coaches and players that people do not care about your political ideology. People want you because you're amazing at what you do. For years, the media, they have encouraged this line of questioning. And now, all of a sudden, when Dawn Staley is asked about transgender athletes, the media wants to pretend to be outraged? Mike Freeman from USA Today, better known here on the channel as the Star Trek Virgin. Mike took a break this weekend from trying to seduce C-3PO to express his support for Dawn Staley. It is remarkable that Dawn Staley is an ally for transgender athletes. I'm so happy I'm leaving C-3PO alone this weekend. I'm so happy I want to cry. The overall sentiment in the media is that this question was inappropriate to be asked of Dawn Staley. Why? Why was it inappropriate? Go ask Riley Gaines if this question was inappropriate. Go ask the young women who were forced to share a locker room with Leah Thomas if this question was inappropriate. How was it inappropriate? Because it was asked 24 hours before the national championship game? You can't have it both ways. You can't encourage coaches and players to express their political ideology, then get mad when a real journalist asks them about it. I hate to agree with Mike Freeman here, but he's actually right. Dawn Staley voicing support, Dawn Staley advocating for transgender women in women's basketball, that could have massive consequences. Just think about it. Dawn Staley is the face of women's college basketball. Well, Casey, that's not true. Caitlin Clark is the face of women's college basketball. Katie Rue Clark is gone. Today is her last day of professional basketball. As soon as she walks off the court this afternoon, she will be given a hard hat and will be required to report for duty in the WNBA dump. Dawn Staley, she will still be the head coach at South Carolina next season. We have the most high-profile coach in women's college basketball, the face of the sport, saying that she supports biological men being allowed to play. If Dawn Staley supports it, how long will it be before it actually happens? Here's a better question. What will public response be if it actually happens? I can tell you what the public response would be. People will turn it off. All this goodwill, all this mainstream attention and exposure that women's college basketball has received, all these record high ratings, all of that will vanish. They're already at risk of vanishing next season because Caitlin Clark is going to be gone. You start putting identifiers on the court, forget about it. The popularity of women's college basketball, it'll fall faster than the soap in a prison shower. But give me your thoughts on this. Dawn Staley gets flustered when asked if she supports biological dudes in women's basketball. Instead of just passing on the question, Dawn Staley answers and supports it. Would this destroy the popularity of women's college basketball? Also, do you think it was appropriate for Outkick to ask Dawn Staley this question to begin with? You let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. I appreciate your support. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.